The Super Media Bros podcast is a founding member of the OddPods Media Network.
Super Media Bros.
It was weird seeing Madonna in something not Evita or A League of Their Own.
For me, it's reverse. I went and saw this movie in the theater.
Oh, wow. Right on.
So seeing League of Their Own and all that, it was like reverse for me. I was like, oh, damn it, she got all serious, you know.
Welcome to the Super Media Bros podcast, where two best friends give comedically informative takes on movies, music, pro wrestling, and much more. I'm Richie. Devin is still on vacation for the rest of the month of September, so in the meantime, I've been having special guests come onto the show and do some Cult Cinema Saturday episodes with me. Most of these movies we've either visited on Cult Cinema Showdown or we have talked about in passing but have never featured on the program. Today, we actually have one that has both never been spoken of and has never been featured on our podcast, and this was a suggestion from my guest today, returning once more, Russ from the Infectious Groove Music YouTube channel and podcast. What's going on, dude?
What up, what up? Yeah, I'm excited as hell to have suggested this. I think what's funny is when I threw it out there, I thought you were going to be like, do what now? And like you were like instantly like, hell yeah. We'll cover that. Like, I have wanted to start a conversation with somebody about this movie since I saw it in the theater, and like no one ever wants to talk about, like, when it was current. When it was new, no one wanted to talk to me about it.
Right.
So I was like, so I'm forever throwing it out there, hoping someone will want to talk about it.
Right. And the movie in question is Who's That Girl? Starring Madonna and Griffin Dunn. And this was a movie that came out in 1987, directed by James Foley. And it was what's considered a screwball comedy, which I love shit like this. It's very slapstick. It's very Tex Avery-esque as far as like just the outlandish kind of like cartoony shit that happens and would probably actually never happen in real life. And if it did, somebody please record that shit because nobody will fucking believe you.
And you know, it's funny that you say that. I think that definitely nowadays the quote unquote screwball comedy is just lost. Like, at the risk of sounding like an old person, I don't think many younger people even know what a screwball comedy is. And what you said is like, if you go into it going, okay, I have to suspend a whole lot of disbelief on this, it's so much fun. And I don't mean just this. I mean any screwball comedy.
Right.
They're a lot of fun. And I don't know what people were expecting when it was released, or even since. Like, because it has, to my knowledge, this movie hasn't grown into any sort of cult status, and I think it should have. Like, I think this movie's so much better than it gets credit for.
I'll agree with you on that one, just because like I remember having seen this just forever ago. Like, it was a movie that was just on the shelf at my parents' video store. Like my whole family had a video store and everything, and this was one of the movies that was sitting on the shelf, and it would get rented like maybe every so often. And we would just play, because in video stores you would just play videos and shit like on like the TV or whatever,
right,
like when people are coming in. This was one of them, and that was how I saw it. Was on VHS. I think it was like 1995 when I first saw this. And as a kid, I thought it was funny. Like, for me, I thought it was funny. But then when I got older, I was like, well, let me give it another go, you know.
And as you get older too, there's so many little jokes in the movie that you'll catch with repeated views. There's I'm not trying to paint this out to be like Clue, like, you know, like super deep, you know, like you got to watch it 100 times to catch all the jokes. Yeah. But there's a lot of jokes that you can't catch on the first or second run through this movie.
No, and that's the fun about this movie too, is that you don't have to think about it. You know, I think a lot of movies nowadays, which there's nothing wrong with these, by the way, because I fucking love movies like this, but a lot of movies you kind of have to really hone in and like really pay attention to. And I mean, again, I don't mind it, but this is one where you can just kind of turn your brain off and like you said, suspend your disbelief and just believe whatever the hell you're seeing. And to your point earlier, how you were saying that this movie kind of got shit on because Madonna was in it. I loved it because Madonna was in it, because I think she's fucking entertaining as hell. And
so it's funny you say that, because when I was a kid, I had to, because I loved it when I went and saw it, right? And I was 12 when I went and saw it. So, and Madonna looks amazing in this movie. And for a long time, I had to be like, I wonder if I just like that because it's her. You know what I mean? And then now I get to the point where I'm like, No, I bet a bunch of people didn't like it because it's her. And I think she's hilarious in this. Like her comic delivery in this movie is hilarious.
Yeah, and her physical presence with like physical comedy is funny in here too. Combined with like the accent that she has and everything else going on with her character, which the plot of the movie is she plays a character named Nikki Finn. She's kind of a carefree personality person, and she has taken the fall for the murder of the guy that she was seeing, who had this is all explained throughout the movie. Spoilers abound, obviously, but like the boyfriend caught wind of an embezzlement scheme, and he pretty much gets caught by the people in question, and they off him, and then they frame her for the murder. She winds up doing 4 years of a 7-year sentence and is released on good behavior. And the movie kind of follows her getting intertwined with another character named Loudon Trott, who is marrying the daughter of a really rich dude in New York. And like their paths cross while she's basically trying to find the people responsible for it. All the while, this same guy, Loudon, is assigned by his soon-to-be father-in-law to escort her to the bus stop to put her on a bus to Philadelphia. And it's just weird because, like, right out of the gate, you would think, like, okay, there's got to be some connection, like, immediately here, just because why would this dude care about what this person is doing? You know what I mean? Like, right. That's where you kind of have this, something ain't right here. And I don't know if they meant to do that, but, like, you know, again.
I think they did. She pretty much tells you everything that leads up to where the start of the movie is, right? Mm-hmm. Which is like what you were just saying, you know, like, hey, so I was going with this guy and he found out about this thing and whatever, right? But if you watch the movie again for the second time, the cartoon that opens the movie shows you everything that happened before the movie starts.
Yep.
So when I saw that, the first time I went and saw this in the theater, I didn't get that at all. I was like, oh, well, this is just a cartoon happening with Madonna in it, you know, or whatever else. Mm-hmm. And then the second time I watched it was after it came out on VHS. And I was like, oh, that's the whole story she tells in the middle of the movie. So the plot is told twice to you during the movie, once with the cartoon and once when she directly tells another character.
Yeah, I thought that was cool as hell. But and also the animation in question, I love the style that it's done in.
Yeah.
I know it's not the exact same, but the vibes that I got, and I know this is totally like left field probably, but it reminded me of the little cartoon pieces from Rush's A Show of Hands live concert.
No, yeah, I totally feel that. I get that. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and I'm a sucker for. I love animation. I love any type of animation, and I thought that was a really cool way to explain the plot if you're paying attention, which again, this is one of those things like you mentioned earlier, you catch on a repeated view where it's like, oh yeah, they're totally like showing what all happened. Because if you don't know fuck all what's going on with this movie, at least they have the decency to tell you about, you know, a quarter to midway through via Nikki's monologue she's given, you know, Loudon. And dude, it's hilarious because the shit that they go through in this movie, like throughout, like front to back, it's some of the most outlandish, cartoony, funny fucking shit, really.
Yeah.
The fact that as soon as he gets to the jailhouse to pick her up, she is like, she's already kind of showing who she is as a person, you know, just sitting there like in front of the parole board. She's like, oh, can I smoke? And they're like, well, you got anything else? And she's like, yeah, you got any mascara? Like, she's more worried about like getting her fucking mascara and like getting her fucking leather jacket and all this other shit, and winds up punching one of the fucking security guards on the way out. And I had to laugh because I was like, dude, that would put you right back in the fucking slammer. Like,
well, yeah, right. I like the line right there where the guard says, the other guard says, what, do you want her back in here?
Yeah.
Like, no.
And her face, like, she just kind of like, just, and that's the comedy that I love about this, is that she seems very unassuming, but she's a little firecracker.
Yeah, there's a bunch of parts like that through the movie, like when she's buying when she's buying all the stolen guns.
Yes.
And she's in that guy's apartment. She's being very aloof and very, you know, doesn't really care what's going on. But then like when the shit hits the fan, she like takes control of the situation and like throws the guy down and then grabs Loudon and runs out of the room. And you're like, and she's the one that gives him the confidence to jump from building to building. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, it's really cool. Like there's a lot more to the character than how it was marketed, which it was marketed as Madonna is a dumb blonde in a comedy, you know? And she is doing a dumb blonde, but to me, the character is the dumb blonde is the act. Like Nikki Finn is a lot smarter than she lets on to people.
Yeah, she's very street smart. And it's apparent in full scenes throughout the movie where, especially whenever she's like, yeah, I want to go shopping, like before I go or whatever. And she winds up going into a record shop in this mall and lifting like a ton of fucking cassette tapes. And then to cover getting out of there, she slips a cassette tape in this random dude's pocket. And she's like, hey, meet me out front. I got to ditch this guy. And so he leaves and sets the alarm off, and then they wind up leaving him. She's got all this loot.
She's like, well, that's right. Lock him up and throw away the key.
Yeah, exactly.
Set that poor guy up.
Yeah.
But there's little things in that scene, too. Like, for example, she's setting up the next con, but then Loudon's like, oh, look, they forgot to take the tags off your clothes from the last store. And she not even paying attention to him. She's like, oh, wow, that's weird. Yeah. Like, while she's setting up the next con.
Yeah.
You know? And the whole idea is she's working this one guy because she's got to get close to him to put that tape in his pocket. So she's got like 3 plates spinning at once, you know? So the character's way smarter than at least at the minimum what's marketed.
Right. And then like right afterwards when they get away in the car, or they leave in the car and she winds up driving. And now, meanwhile, I forgot to mention that 2 of the police detectives that are supposed to be like following her to the bus station to see that she's off as well. One of them also, I kind of guesses right that she's going to be looking for these guys, and he had a hunch that she wasn't truly involved in it, which I think is kind of neat. That's like a little subplot. It kind of reminds me of Taggart and Billy from Beverly Hills Cop when they tail Axel Foley. Yeah. They kind of give that vibe off to me because you got one who's kind of a smart ass, old school guy, and then you got one that's like kind of young and not dumb, but he's just kind of doofy, you know. And those 2 are pretty humorous as well because they wind up trying to chase them, and she knows that she's being tailed, and she like goes on this she takes a right through a railroad crossing and then goes alongside this train. Well, they wind up getting pulled over.
I love where she goes, we're gonna make it.
Yeah, dude, fucking love it and, so hard.
Loudon goes, I'll accept anything except a tie.
Yeah. Well, I love whenever they get pulled over finally, and she's got no license or nothing. The cop approaches her. She just kind of leans over, and he's like, license registration. She's like, I don't have a license. It's kind of an emergency. My husband's having a heart attack here, and she
sticks her finger in the barrel of the gun and everything.
Dude, and by God, like the scene that follows this, like it's apparent that like he's having a fucking anxiety attack because of that, the police officer believes what's happening, and then the next shot is them getting wheeled into the ER, and she's running alongside him, just fake crying, like freaking out. And it's like, oh, what's his name? Loudon. What's his last name? Clear.
Well, I'm sure we'll touch on the other one at some point. So I have 2 inside jokes with only myself from this movie that I say all the time. One of them is anytime somebody says Loudon, if somebody's going to say loud and clear. If somebody says loud and I go clear, and like nobody knows what I'm talking about. But in this, with the scene Richie's talking about when they bust into the ER and they're like, "What's your husband's name?" She's like Loudon, and the nurse is like, "Last name?" She goes clear, and then the nurse just ever so straight face is like, "Okay, Loudon, clear."
Yeah, not even missing a beat.
Yeah. And hold on 1 second before when they get to the mall. Talking about her and driving, she jumps these curbs, does all in this beautiful rolls, by the way, which starts out the movie beautiful. Yeah. And she jumps all these curbs and shit, and then she slides it to a stop in across 3 different parking spots. And Loudon already looks like he's starting to have his heart attack. And she goes, "Oh, we'll park it this way so it doesn't get scratched."
I know. And that poor fucking Rolls Royce, dude. It's not even his. It's his soon-to-be mother-in-law's Rolls Royce. And that car gets fucked over worse than the Griswold family truckster.
Much. It does. So much.
So bad.
There's so much. And I love that it's okay, so with something like this, and you know this, Richie, you've seen a million movies and you've seen really bad productions and you've seen movies where you have to forgive stuff, right?
Sure.
With this movie, is it not shocking the continuity of the car? Like, there's no point in the movie where you're like, well, when did that happen? Like, you literally see everything bad happen to this car throughout the movie. There's not a point where you're like, wait, where did that spray paint come from? Like, they show you the spray paint. Like,
Right.
Wait, when did the headlights get busted out? No, they show you the headlights getting busted out. You know what I mean? Like, literally the progression. The only thing that could be argued you don't see is who set up the fireworks at the end of the
Dude,
movie.
I'm telling you. Oh, and the other plot that I keep forgetting about. Loudon is not only tasked with bringing her to the bus stop.
Oh, yeah. What else is he supposed to
A
do?
fucking exotic cougar that he has to deliver to an animal activist named Montgomery Bell. And that's another subplot in the movie. But this damn cougar is like part of the fun.
Even from the start, they have that gag where the other the bike courier shows up to get it, and he's like, yeah, what am I supposed to pick up? They're like, oh, right there. He opens up the thing, and you hear the cat go ape shit, and you see the courier take off.
Yeah.
But yeah, and in a way, later in the movie, in a way, when I could see on first view, I could see going like, well, why do you need that subplot? But later in the movie, it comes into play. It ends up being part of the love story of this cat and everything. But I might as well tell you this now. So that's the other inside joke that I have. And so this cat, Nikki Finn ends up naming this cat Murray.
Mm-hmm.
And when they go into Cartier, Loudon keeps putting all this stuff on Mother's charge because he's there to pick up the wedding ring and so on. When Madonna picks up this, like, who knows, $1 million necklace, and she says, put that on Mother's account as well. And Loudon gives her this just nasty look, and she goes, for Murray.
Yeah.
So that's the other joke that I have with myself is if I'm in a record store or something and I've just pick up, if I like add something to the pile without like saying anything to who I'm with or whatever else, and somebody's like if let's say I'm shopping for records and I put $100 box set like on top of what I do, and if someone gives me a look, I'm always like, for Murray.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like nobody, I'm waiting for the day that somebody, at least in a record store, somebody's like, are you doing fucking Who's That Girl? You know?
Right.
I've been waiting since 1987 for it to happen, but I sure hope someday it happens, because the way, and anybody who's listening to this, if you haven't seen this movie, you're probably like, what are these guys going on about? Like, if you watch this movie, there's so much charm in the way Madonna delivers all of her lines. It's so surprising. Like, I'm stunned that she is that good at what she did in this movie, and no one talks about it.
Right. And it's a shame, honestly. Like I was mentioning earlier, before we really started rolling, a lot of people, when they think about Madonna in a movie, it's either like A League of Their Own or Evita, stuff like that. Because when I ask people about, like, have you seen Madonna, like in movies or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, that baseball movie. And I'm like, yeah, it's a great fucking movie. And she's definitely not like the central character, but it's cool to see her pre those, or at least pre Evita, because I feel like that was her most well-known thing outside of, her music career. This movie was such a wonderfully charming piece of work, and dare I say she carries it, because like I probably wouldn't have watched it if she wasn't in the damn thing. And she's funny as fuck.
I totally agree. I think she's hilarious in this movie. Like there's so many little things about the character. Like my wife and I were just talking about this the other night, that and I'm going to try not to go too far off the reservation, but we've been watching a lot of Family Ties recently. And the character of Alex P. Keaton is an unlikable trash bag. Like, Alex Keaton is just not a likable person. Like, he's the total asshole of that family.
Right.
But it's Michael J. Fox's charm that makes him a likable character, right? Same thing with Ferris Bueller, really. Like, Ferris Bueller is just a piece of work, like a total asshole. But it's Matthew Broderick brings that charm where you're like, it's okay because it's him, And the character of Nikki Finn, like even the scene you and I discussed in the mall, like she trashes this guy's car getting to the mall, then she rips some clothes off, then she's setting up this other guy to get, like, just so she can, like, those are all asshole moves. But Madonna does it with such charm that you're like, it's fine.
Right. And even the way she lollygags, skips around and shit, she's very eccentric. Like her character is very eccentric. And I think that was the word that I was looking for way, way earlier to describe her. And it's not even a bad eccentric. It's just like, okay, I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised at, half the shit that she's saying and doing.
Yeah.
And that's the charm of it, especially the car is stolen umpteen times throughout this movie. I should, point out that fucking car gets stolen so many times. The cougar goes missing so many times. And somehow they always find both. But the scene where she's getting the guns, like you were talking about earlier, they actually they escape out of that situation because the dude that's selling the guns to her thinks that she's setting him up. Whenever Loudon shows up, he thinks he's a fucking Fed or something. And,
oh my god!
Yeah, that whole shit is just nuts. But they wind up bonding there because for those of you that haven't seen this or are planning on watching, Nikki and Loudon eventually come to realize they do have a lot more in common than they realize. But societal wise, they don't look like they belong together in any way, shape, or form. Loudon is this really like upstate New York, like gonna be married to a rich dude, works for a giant corporation thing, and Nikki just seems like this regular everyday chick
from the streets.
Yeah. And like he's the business type, she's the street smart person who has obviously had to make her own way, no matter how that had to happen. And you can tell they just come from two different walks of life, but weirdly they both find that they have a shitload in common, and they bond a little bit like right after this whole ordeal with the gun exchange. And that's where you start seeing that Loudon is probably not as into what he's about to sign up for at all. He seems like he feels out of place.
Well, there's that. And I don't disagree with you at all, but I also think that one thing that's becoming apparent to Loudon by this point in the movie is, I would argue, one of the greatest running jokes in a movie. And but how anybody doesn't think this is one of the funniest running jokes in a movie. But you agree, though, that not only is he getting this bond with Nikki, but also he's kind of learning through other people that maybe his wife to be isn't great.
Oh no, and
how is he learning that?
He is learning that because they eventually take a taxi, which I think this is absolutely fucking funny. Like he's taking a taxi, and he gets to where he's going, where his fiance Wendy is. Who I need to point out, Wendy is Billy's secretary / boss in Gremlins 2, the new batch, and I recognized her, and I was like, I see her face, but without the big poofy red hair that was in that movie. I was like, okay, I see where this is, but I digress. He's in the cab, and the cab driver is like, oh, this is Wendy Worthington's place. He's like, how do you know that? And he's like, oh, I had her in my cab or whatever. And he's like, oh, right on, like, oh, I didn't know she took a cab here. He's like, I didn't say I gave her a ride. I said I had her in my cab.
Yeah.
And he's not the only cab driver to say that.
It's at least 3 times.
Yeah, dude.
And there's the one dude. Then there's the best one is the Jamaica guy. Yeah. It's like, this is Wendy Worthington's place, and he's like, let me guess, I had her in my cab once. There's that, and then the other, and then there's the super old dude who's like, oh, this is the Worthington place. Hold on, Wendy gave me a key.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So it's like to bring this back to what you were saying, like he's growing this bond with Nikki, but he's in parallel learning that maybe Wendy Worthington's not the most cleanly person he could have hooked up with.
No, and then also her dad, like the fucking Bible looking prenup that he had him fucking sign, dude. And
he said, what is this? And it's a bunch of diagrams of where he can touch her and where he can't.
Yeah. It's like, oh, no, you don't need to read all that. Just sign it. It's like, dude.
By the way, speaking of her dad, so Lauren and I just watched this movie again the other night, and near the beginning of the movie where her dad is, there's a very labored scene near the beginning of the movie where they force you to watch her dad taking fencing lessons.
Yeah.
And I have never seen a scene. If you would have told me the first time I was watching this, like, oh, don't worry, fencing's going to come back later in the movie, I would have been like, no, it's not, But like by the end of the movie, there's a reason why they made you watch him doing the fencing thing. Like it all comes back. It's crazy.
Yeah, because on the scene where they're bonding with each other, Loudon tells Nikki that he took fencing, or whatever.
Yeah.
But that his father didn't think it was very manly, so he never supported him through it and never came to watch him. And the joke of this is like, it's smart because like it's telling like information that's going to be needed soon. But it's also like kind of telling how Nikki's kind of ditzy a little bit because she's
two different worlds there.
She's like, why would your dad want to watch? What did she say? Why would your dad want to watch you like rob a
why
place?
would your dad want to watch you move stolen goods?
Yeah, because he calls it fencing, and she's like, "It's like what?" Like the disconnect is so fucking hilarious right there.
Hello, friends. This is an AI version of John. Lauren has the power to make me say anything she wants me to say. She decided that I needed to tell you to listen to the Beard Al podcast. It's the podcast where we talk about two of the best things in the world, beer and the wonderful Weird Al. She also wants me to tell you that she rules and I drool. Lauren is awesome. I smell like feet. Go listen to the Beard Al podcast, available wherever you get podcasts. Lauren is the best at running the show. I'm just side talent. Lauren is so great.
They wind up getting eventually into the limousine. She spots Raul, the guy that she's supposed to be grabbing a lockbox at a bank somewhere or a vault because she's got left with a key from her dude who got murdered. And she's held on to it for the last 4 years that she's been locked away. And she knows that Raul is the person that has the bank vault number that she needs for the lockbox. So they wind up finding this dude and his heavy, if you will, because that's what every bad guy in a movie needs is a fucking heavy.
Yeah.
So it's hilarious because she winds up holding them at gunpoint, tells the limo driver to take a walk. She's like, "Hey, you walk down the street, don't look back or you're dead." He's like, "Okay." Then he just leaves. I mean, fuck it, this limo ain't worth it. So she winds up getting these two guys and Loudon to drive the thing up this car garage and crashes it through a wall that's just kind of hanging over a pier.
Because Loudon loses his glasses along the way.
Yeah, and I love how she's like, Loudon's doing great right now. And they're like, no, he's not. Like, they're losing their shit in the back seat. Like, no, he's not. But the fencing kind of comes into play here, but it's not like what we are talking about where it comes into play, like when it matters. But I've seen this in a couple of films where basically like a little skew breaks out between the four of them, and Loudon winds up breaking the antenna off the back of the limousine, and he winds up fencing with the antenna wire against one of the dudes with a knife, and it's like, dude, hell yeah, I get it, man.
Dude, and I'll say this is a minor thing, but for this being put out in 87, and I'm sure not the highest budget movie in the history of the world, I think it was even blue screen back then. I think it was before green screen, but the blue screen or the green screen work where like Raul's hanging outside the limo and like it's supposed to be hanging off the side of the building. It's not too shabby. Like it still kind of holds up. Like it doesn't look incredibly fake when you look at it now.
No, it doesn't at all. And I think it's mostly because, I mean, they still do it now, but I know for a fact back then you had to combine much more practical with your blue screen than you would just completely CGing it in. So the camera work was really well done. The camera placement was well done, and then like the stunt work was being well done as well.
Yeah. So far, if nothing else, hopefully people listening to this are like, wow, this movie sounds way better than I thought it would be. Like, and yes, you can get this on Google for like $3. I think this is worth every penny of $3 to rent watch this movie. And
if you actually, it might be free either way, but I know like we have YouTube Premium, but like I know there's a ton of free movies on YouTube. This was actually free on YouTube for me to watch like multiple times. So like rather like it's available to watch. Like I'm gonna put links for Amazon and YouTube in the show notes below for anybody that wants to click up and just watch it and maybe come back and check this episode out again. But the movie is far better than what you would think it is. They wind up, like, all the stories wind up tying together where they eventually get the cougar to this dude, this animal activist who built an entire sanctuary on the roof of his penthouse apartment, which is fucking cool as shit, actually. Yeah. Like, there's a ton of animals.
Where apparently his life is just to hang out with hot chicks and animals and drink a lot.
I want whatever this guy's having. I mean,
I'm not mad at it.
No, I'm not. Same. In fact, I was just sitting there like, look at this guy. He's hell yeah. But it's cool because he takes like animals that are endangered, because there's only 4 of this particular cougar around. And this is kind of more where Nikki and Loudon profess like that they're falling for each other, and but Loudon's like, I'm getting married and all this other shit. And which I should point out, they found the lockbox, and the next day she gets on the bus to leave, and he's just going to go get married or whatever. Well, while she's on the bus ride, she's opening up this box, and has got a shitload of photographs and all these pieces of evidence that shows that it's actually Wendy Worthington's father who is the embezzler and was the mastermind behind the entire theft that happened. And he is the entire reason why her dude got killed and why she got locked away and why he's been on her ass to get out of here to Philadelphia this whole time. And oh boy, she as soon as she figures this out and puts two and two together, I have never feared for a bus to flip over more in my entire life than I saw when this happened. I was like, oh, can't believe that thing didn't roll the fuck over.
Yeah, I know.
She decides, I'm going to drive this motherfucker to the wedding and crash it. Which that whole scene was pretty fun, too. Because this is where the fencing comes back into play. They get to a part in the wedding where it's like, oh, if these two shouldn't be wed, speak now, forever hold your peace. And she, comes out on this balcony and like professes like literally everything to everybody. And this is another like suspend your disbelief, because we all know somebody like this day and age would have tackled her ass.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's so many things. I think the second half of the movie ends up being far more screwball comedy than the first half.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in any sort of derogatory way. There's the way that Raul and the fat man end up kidnapping the bridal party.
Yes.
And they pretty much kidnap them like all roped together, which is very, very screwball comedy-ish, the way that happens. And then when everybody's there at the wedding, they do those very big things where like when Nikki's looking at a thing and somebody's when the whole crowd's supposed to be looking at Nikki, like they all in choreography, the whole audience looks at her and then they all look the other way. Like, so a lot, even from the bus ride to her trying to get over into security, into the thing and everything. It's a lot. The very end of the movie really ramps up the screwball aspect of the screwball comedy to me, but in a good way though. It doesn't feel disjointed to me. It doesn't feel like all of a sudden they were like, oh crap, this ending sucks, so we better just really ham it up. Like the ending would be great if they'd played it straight, and it's great the way it is.
Yeah. Because some of the funny parts are when Loudon and Mr. Worthington are fence fighting each other throughout the entire like setup arrangement of this wedding spot. She's got a handful of cake and she's just skipping alongside them fighting, just, eating. And she's just like, I want to go. She's like, I want to go to Philly after this. Like we should go. You should come over for dinner, meet my mom and all this other shit. I'm like, oh my God, it's
I
fucking
can't remember.
funny.
She's like, how you doing, honey? Or something. He's like, I'm a little busy right now or something like that. And she's like, okay, well later, can we go do this? He's like, yeah, but right now I'm busy or something like that. Yeah. It's like,
and she's like, yeah, don't be too long.
Well, and part of me too makes me think that like, that's part of her thing is she just assumes everything's going to turn out. Do you know what I mean? Like
right.
she doesn't really stress about anything because she's that confident in Loudon,
Mm-hmm. Which is great because it's shown throughout the entirety of this film that nobody in Loudon's life, including his own dad, was ever confident in him.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So to have someone that believes in him and truly believes in him, absolutely, because for the most part, like a lot of people would think like, is she just putting a front on? But like when she's on the bus and she's actually heartbroken that like it, as far as she was concerned, it wasn't working out, and
yeah.
So it's cool to see the two of them, wind up with each other, actually. So,
and it's fun too that with the part where she gets on the bus and she's going to go. The idea there is that she doesn't really care what was in the safe deposit box. Like she doesn't care about proving her innocence anymore because she doesn't really have anybody that cares about her, right?
Right.
And when she looks into that and sees that it's Worthington's dad, that's the issue. Like. She's not going back to clear herself. She's going back to make sure Loudon doesn't end up in shit.
Yep. And that's an entire character arc right there in itself. So
right. Yep.
And it's a fun character development. And it's heartwarming. And like, I think it's hilarious, like the way like the movie ends with, the detectives obviously like, they get him and they arrest, all the people involved. And funny enough, like the two detectives wind up having a thing for each other at the end, which I thought was fucking hilarious.
Which is, when I was a kid, when I saw it in the theater, I didn't see that coming at all. Like at the end, I was just kind of like, oh, well, that's kind of weird to throw that at the end. Like, not like that's weird, but I thought I didn't see it coming. And then when I watched it again after it came out on VHS, you watched through the movie, you could see it coming.
Absolutely. And it's fucking hilarious. Like the way that it happens. And it's just so like, in a good way, it's unexpected. And you're just like, oh, fuck yeah, man. And then, like, they're on the bus going back to Philadelphia. And then you got Murray, the cougar, and his mate.
Running after.
Yeah, I was like, hell yeah. So,
and there's a couple points in the movie where Murray is missing, but Madonna's the one. She whistles and he comes right back.
Yep, saves the day.
And even when Loudon gets to the sanctuary, and he's basically going there to tell this guy, hey, I lost this cat. When Loudon walks in, before Loudon even notices, Murray's laying there the whole time, and you could tell because he's wearing the necklace.
Yeah, I thought that was funny as fuck too. She finally, she got him his necklace. But yeah, this movie's fantastic. Like, I know we kind of ran through like some of the highlights and stuff, but like it's definitely worth sitting and taking in like a handful of times. Actually,
yeah.
Not only was this movie a thing, its soundtrack was a thing, and its tour was a thing, because the soundtrack and the tour wound up being, weirdly, the most successful parts of this entire project.
One of my favorite Madonna songs comes from this movie, and it's in the opening, during the whole animation. It's playing that song, Causing a Commotion. I love that song. That's why when Madonna's Greatest Hits came out, the Immaculate Collection, I was so bummed that song wasn't on her Greatest Hits record.
Right. And I love that there's, especially in that when there's a couple of like references to get into the groove. Like, there's callbacks to older material of hers, and it's a fun listen. And that one, what was it? The Look of Love is on there as well, and of course, like the title track, "Who's That Girl?" Like, but "Causing a Commotion" is probably my favorite from that album, that soundtrack.
Yeah, I love that song so much, and I thought it was a big hit at the time that it came out. So when her hits record came out, I was really surprised that it wasn't on there. But I know the title track did really well too. Like the title track was a much bigger hit than I always give it credit for. Like I don't dislike the title track at all, but I don't love it either.
Yeah.
But for me, it's kind of a retread of La Isla Bonita that she did on True Blue, cover the title song for this. But this tour, I wanted to go to as a kid, and I didn't get to go to it. The only time I ever saw Madonna was on the tour after that, the Blind Ambition tour. For the Like a Prayer record. That was the only time I ever got to see her, was on that.
Right on. The movie had like a $17 to $20 million budget, and it only made like 7.3 million at the box office,
which is crazy.
It's a fucking bomb, and that's what sucks, is that it is considered a bomb. But again, the tour and the soundtrack had commercial success, which I guess in a whole kind of helped pull money back into, if that was all like tied into this project, because I think the tour did like $25 million in revenue over the course of its run. And Madonna went on to do more successful like film stuff after this, which again, I think it's a crime that this wasn't. But the point is like, if you see this and you are just kind of like, what the fuck about it, look past the what the fuck and like give it a shot. I really think a lot of people that have never heard of this or have never given it a chance like should, and I think they'll be very satisfied. Love
for this movie to get that. I feel this movie strongly deserves cult classic status. Like, it should be a movie, like people should get the "This Is Wendy Worthing" or "I Had Her in the Cab Once" jokes, or people should get the for Murray jokes, or the loud and clear thing. Like, that should be a thing that is just in pop culture that people quote. And I don't know, literally no one ever talks about this movie ever. And it's like, some movies that like for example, Clue is a cult classic movie, and it's, in my opinion, one of the greatest comedies of all time. Okay. So I understand that not every movie that makes cult classic status is like the greatest movie ever made. And I'm not over here saying, oh, Who's That Girl's the greatest comedy ever made. But it's a really, really strong comedy. Like, it's a very, very, very good movie. And I don't think it gets anywhere near the shake that I know it certainly didn't get the shake it deserved when it came out. And I'm stunned that it still hasn't. Like, I can't believe with what an icon Madonna is. Like, how are people not talking about, more of her early stuff, the movie wise? It's puzzling to me.
Right. And who knows, maybe one day it will. Like, some of these movies don't really find their footing. I know it's been over 30 years since this movie has come out, but a lot of films really don't find footing for even longer than that sometimes. And, I'm a firm believer that word of mouth still works to this day. So if you are on Amazon Prime, or if you have YouTube Premium, or hell, if you have either one of those, just a free trial you can rent.
Or like I said, it's $3 to go to just pay Google for it.
Yeah. And it's worth every penny. It's you don't have to go anywhere. You can just sit on your fucking couch and check it out, and you can have it for like 48 hours for $3. Like, fucking do it.
My thing is too, and I say this as an enormous Elvis Presley fan. Elvis movies are all, Elvis was a insert career here who could also sing and then ends up getting the girl, right? So like mechanic, race car driver, whatever, this is not that. Like, this is Madonna. Like, yes, Madonna songs are in the movie, but at no point does she stop and perform, or, you know what I mean? Like, this is not her being, Nikki Finn is not a singer in the movie. Like, I think it's great that they very much could have made this, and it's a musical, starring the songs of Madonna, and they absolutely didn't, No,
they leaned into her fucking acting talent, which who knew, at the time. There were people like, well, who knew, So,
I had no idea that she had comic chops until we saw that movie. I remember, like I told you, dude, near the top of the discussion, for a long time, I thought, well, you just like it because you just think it's a good performance because it's Madonna and you really like Madonna, And then literally, when you and I talked about doing this, it was like a month ago or so, I watched the movie for the first time in like 20 years. And I was just dying laughing at a ton of stuff that I like instantly. My wife had never seen it before. And so she was like pre-laughing at things that she knew was coming. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she could see where a scene was going, and she was like, oh God, this is going to be ridiculous. Then it was. And
I thought about her watching this too. I was like, oh, she's going to be fucking tickled as shit watching half the stuff that's happening in this movie. So,
yeah. And then we just watched it again, like last week. And, so it was her second time seeing it. And it was even like when it was coming up to seeing like, whatever, let's say the mall scene or whatever, she was like, oh, she's going to park the car sideways. She was like already looking forward to stuff. So I think it's one of those things where I think if people just give this movie a chance, you'll be, at a bare minimum, you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Right on. Yeah, that's Who's That Girl from 1987. Dude, thanks for coming and talk about this with me. I was really happy that you suggested this, because like, until you had, I was like, fuck, I forgot about this. You know what I mean? It was one of those things where like, fuck, I forgot about this movie. Let's fucking do it. So
yes, sir. Well, I'm glad you knew about it, because so many, like I say, I thought for sure you were going to be like, you're a man of the world. It's not like you wouldn't not know about it, but I thought for sure you were just going to be like, I don't know how that would go over, but you know what I mean? Like, but like, thanks for giving the movie a chance, to a spotlight, a chance at a spotlight.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all about spotlighting shit that doesn't get it. So,
and then the other one that I mentioned to you at the time, and we'll have to do this somewhere else down the road. But I kid you not, I saw it in the theater in the same month as this was Summer School, another classic 1987 flick.
Oh, absolutely. We'll definitely have to.
I'm not kidding you. I saw that movie like in the same month in the same theater.
Yeah, that's a Carl Reiner film. So
yeah, I know, and he's in it for like 5 seconds at the beginning of the movie.
Right. Yeah, we'll definitely have to do that one for sure. Danny Elfman did the score for that one too, which I think would surprise a lot of people. So,
yes, there's a lot of things that would surprise people in that. There's people that went on to other things that you'd be surprised with, and then it's one of those things where it's the Kirstie Alley trying to step out from Cheers, and it's like, oh, you picked the wrong role. This is not good. Yeah. But anyways, what I'm saying though is, when I said to you, hey, here's two great movies that I love that I think need more attention. Both of them, you were like, yes, we should do those, and which is exactly what I was hoping for.
For sure. Man, if anybody out there likes music discussions, Russ, let everybody out there know what you do, man. Because like Russ is very, very music based in his project, so I'll let him give you the sales pitch from here.
Yes, sir. Go over to Infectious Groove Music on YouTube. So just youtube.com/Infectious Groove Podcast, or if you go to YouTube and just type in Infectious Groove Music, we have 3 videos every single week on our YouTube channel. And it's growing, incrementally, like all things. We nose to the grindstone, and we're trying to gain more subscribers all the time. But all of the videos we do on our channel are all the exact opposite of what you see elsewhere. So we don't do any overhyped or fail or worst of lists. We do all underrated, hidden gems, that type of stuff. Like we just had a video come out the other day of hidden gems from Rush, and the comment section just lit up with people because everybody who's a Rush fan has that feeling of like, I'm the only one who really gets Rush. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, that's what we try and do is just say like, hey, here's 5 great songs from this artist that maybe you haven't heard. Or another series we have is 5 songs to start with. Like if someone said, hey, I love the band U2, but or I've always heard of U2, but where do I start? Here's the first 5 songs I would tell you to listen to. And then we do reaction videos, which we have every Saturday on the channel. So if you are interested in positive music discussion, again, go to youtube.com/Infectious Groove Podcast and hit the subscribe button.
And if you want to do that, simply just scroll up the show notes below, and you'll find all the links to the channels there. Visit supermediabrospodcast.com for past, present, and future episodes. Check out all the other shows on the OddPods Media Network by visiting oddpodsmedia.com. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on social media. Leave us a rating and review at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, GoodPods, and Podchaser. Next week, I'm going to be hanging out with my buddy Stevie from the Because Fuck You, That's Why podcast to talk about mall rats. So stick around for that. And then Spooky Media Bros is right around the corner just shortly after. So much more content coming your way. Russ, thanks again for coming to hang out with me, dude. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me, brother. I'm so glad that you love this movie as much as I do. And I hope, if nothing else, I hope one of your listeners is like, I gave that movie a chance and I loved it.
Shit, yeah. And hopefully they all will at least give it a chance. So I'm looking forward to doing summer school with you sometime in 2024, because I'm pretty sure that's when the schedule is going to roll around for that. So we'll definitely reconvene then, man.
Heck yeah.
Awesome. All right, everybody, this has been Cult Cinema Saturday, Who's That Girl, starring Madonna. Until next time, I'm Richie. Shades on. We're off.